It turns out, in a fun little twist, that Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth's Monday remark about the deployment of troops take over D.C. may have actually already caused some damage to a different legal trouble that the Trump administration is having right now. See, they're in court over the fact that they invaded LA, where I live, and the way that he talked about the current invasion and harkened back to the LA invasion really undercuts the Trump legal argument that they're making. So let me walk you through it so you understand how he might have blown a wide hole in this case. So this was during the press conference yesterday. It was on the federal takeover of DC. Hegseth announced that the National Guard will be flowing into the streets of Washington in the coming week, and that there are other units we are prepared to bring in, other National Guard units, other specialized units. They will be strong, they will be tough, and they will stand with their law enforcement partners. And importantly, this is nothing new for DOD. In Los Angeles, we did the same thing, working with the California National Guard, working with ICE officers. And in response to that, California's attorney, which is on the California side of that legal proceeding, moved to enter that announcement of the National Guard deployment, specifically his comments about the troops standing with their law enforcement partners and having done the same thing in LA into evidence, and they were ultimately admitted by the judge. Now, the Trump administration had said, no, you can't enter that because they weren't already on the exhibit list. And the judge observed that because of the way that time works linearly, they couldn't have been entered before they were said. But exactly, Skittlebutt in the chat gets to the true heart of this. There was assertions at the time that this is a violation of the Posse Comitatus Act. And it kind of seems pretty clear from what Pete Hegseth is saying there that it is in fact a violation of that. Now, the proceeding is continuing. We're gonna have to see what happens in that. But the Hegseth thing, this is not like this is not Tom Homan or something. This is the head of the Department of Defense making these comments. That is serious. Now that said, you also have some potential outs if you're the Trump administration. It is Pete Hegseth, so you could say, well, nobody takes him seriously, he's wildly unqualified for his position, and you have a point there. You could alternatively say, well, it was a day that ends in day, and so he was probably drunk at the time that he said that, and that's also a compelling legal argument there. But I do think that it's ironic that potentially their invasion of DC could hurt them in terms of the consequences of their invasion of LA. And honestly, as we're gonna get to, with how hot they seem to start invading other cities around America, anything that adds some legal obstacles, I think is a good thing right now. But Nina, we haven't had you on since the announcement on Monday. I don't know if you've been to DC recently. Apparently, everyone there is being assaulted right now, and something has to be done about it, okay? It was really bad and Trump's hand was forced, and so he's taking it over. What do you make of all this?
Yeah, damn the stats. Violent crime is down in DC. And I understand, I'm not saying that in a flippant way, because if you are a victim of violent crime, those stats don't really mean a whole lot to you. But it doesn't surprise me, a man who doesn't even like the labor numbers would not care whether or not violent crime is down in DC. And certainly all of us should be concerned about any innocent person who is a victim. The very fact that this president is trying to turn elected leaders into enemies of the state, so to speak, really galls me, especially as somebody who has not only served as a Cleveland City Councilwoman, but also worked for a mayor who worked tirelessly for the city of Cleveland and cared every day what happened to the people in his city. And mayors and council members, for the most part, some exceptions, really do care and are out there doing everything that they can with very, very limited resources. So turning up the heat and turning these cities into war zones are not the answer. Part of the answer is, can we increase the federal minimum wage? Part of the answer is making sure that everybody has healthcare. Part of the answer is making sure that childcare is affordable. You know where I'm going with this, John. That's part of the answer. The other part is, yes, if somebody is a violent criminal, we have laws on the books already for that. What happened to less government, John? What happened to that? Why don't you let the local officials do their jobs? You can come in, you can pick up the phone and call them, you can try to be helpful to them. But what I reject and what I resent is him turning these elected leaders into enemies of the state, and it's wrong.
100%. Yeah, and normalizing just our soldiers are not, they're no longer there for, stuff abroad. They're there to be used against US citizens. That's what they're there for, okay? And right now, most conservatives don't care, despite decades of talking about the federal government taking over all that. They don't care because it's gonna be in blue cities or whatever. But okay, after a few more years of getting it normalized, okay, so it's President Buttigieg in like 4 years, and another mass shooting in Texas, and nothing happens. And so I don't know, seems like an emergency. Maybe the federal government needs to occupy Texas until they get their gun violence problem in order or something. Maybe confiscate some guns. It is an emergency after all. This sort of thing can go both ways. When you expand the powers of the presidency, most people are gonna wanna keep that power when a new administration comes in. And we're gonna do this stuff about Charlie Kirk. Maybe we'll get to it in tomorrow's show. I just wanna briefly show graphic 9. Trump is now gonna create a squad. Oh, he has a squad he likes actually, of 600 soldiers that are gonna be deployed in 2 different parts of America. Just anytime there's any issue in any city, he's going to flood hundreds of soldiers in the city. And for whatever, racial justice protest, police brutality or something. But obviously we know where this is going. It's gonna be the midterm elections, okay? They're gonna gin up some sort of thing, and they're gonna send in a bunch of soldiers to patrol the voting locations or the vote counting locations. And I hope that between now and then, I mentioned this like 50 times, and I come off looking like the most hyperbolic goof in America because it never actually materializes. But I'm not too worried about that because I think that's what he's doing all of this for. And I think that's why the right-wing media is so excited about it. They like this potentially being a like pressure release valve that saves them in the midterms.